Admiral Jehoon Park stood in the center of the Great Council chamber. The room was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Above him, hundreds of alien beings looked down from floating platforms. Their eyes glowed in different colors. Some had too many arms, others had no arms at all. They all stared at him with anger and fear. Jehoon wore his best uniform. The blue fabric had small gold stars on the shoulders. He had worked 30 years to earn those stars. Now they felt heavy and useless. His hands stayed calm at his sides, but his heart beat fast. He knew this day would decide the future of all humans in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. High Arbiter Velthan Corvex rose from the center platform. The alien leader was tall and thin, with purple skin that seemed to glow. His voice filled the room without needing any machine to make it louder. "We gather today to discuss the human problem," Velthan said. His words made Jehoon's stomach feel cold. "These newcomers have been part of our council for 50 years. In that short time, they have shown behaviors that worry us all." Jehoon wanted to speak, but the rules said he must wait. He listened as one alien after another stood up to accuse his people. They said humans had too many children. They said humans built too many ships. They said humans asked too many questions about things that were not their business. On their home world, they fight wars, said Ambassador Theklari, a being that looked like a giant spider. They kill their own kind for land and resources. What will they do to us when they grow stronger? They spread across space too fast, added Counselor Zephyron, whose body was made of living crystal. In 50 years, they have built colonies on 200 worlds. The Velthari took 3,000 years to settle the same number of planets. More voices joined in. Each one painted humans as dangerous and aggressive. Jehoon knew some of the words were true. Humans did expand quickly. They did have conflicts. But the aliens made it sound like humans were monsters who wanted to destroy everything. Finally, Velthan raised one long arm. The chamber became quiet again. "Admiral Park, you may speak for your species." Jehoon stepped forward. His boots made small clicking sounds on the smooth floor. "Honored members of the council," he began, "humans are not perfect. We make mistakes. We sometimes disagree with each other, but we also help. We share knowledge. We trade fairly. We have kept every treaty we signed with you." "Treaties you signed when you were weak," interrupted Senator Volmek. "What about when you become strong? Will you still follow our rules then?" "We have no wish to rule anyone," Jehoon said. "We only want to live and grow and learn. Isn't that what all species want?" A sound like bitter laughter came from many throats. "You speak of learning," said Velthan, "but you learn our secrets too quickly. You take our technology and make it better. You solve problems in ways we never thought of. This makes you dangerous." Jehoon felt confused. "Are we being punished for being good at solving problems?" "You are being judged for being a threat to galactic peace," Velthan replied. "We elder species have maintained order for thousands of years. We know how to keep the galaxy safe. Humans upset this balance." The voting began. One by one, each species cast their decision. The Velthari voted against humans. So did the spider-like Thekla. The crystal beings voted against them, too. Jehoon watched as every single member voted the same way. No one spoke for humanity except himself. "The decision is made," Velthan announced. "Humanity is hereby exiled from Galactic Council space. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from our territories. You will be relocated to the void reaches beyond the galactic rim." Jehoon's blood turned cold. The void reaches were empty space, far from any trade routes or friendly planets. "You're sending us to die," he said quietly. "We are giving you a chance to prove you can live in peace," Velthan said. "If humans are truly peaceful, you will survive. If you are the threat we believe you to be, the galaxy will be safer without you." The platforms began to float away. The alien beings left without another word. Soon, Ji-hoon stood alone in the empty chamber. His communication device buzzed with urgent messages from human ships across the galaxy. The news was already spreading. He walked slowly to the chamber's great windows. Outside, he could see Earth's diplomatic fleet waiting in orbit. Soon those ships would begin the long journey to gather every human settlement. Millions of people would have to leave their homes. Children born on distant worlds would be forced to abandon the only planets they had ever known. But as Ji-hoon looked at the stars, he felt something unexpected. Along with the sadness and anger, he felt hope. Humans had always done their best work when things seemed impossible. They had survived ice ages and wars and diseases. They had reached for the stars when everyone said it couldn't be done. The aliens thought they were sending humanity to a grave. Maybe they would find out they were wrong. Maybe the void reaches held secrets the Council had never imagined. Maybe exile would make humans stronger, not weaker. Ji-hoon straightened his shoulders and walked toward the exit. He had 30 days to organize the greatest movement of people in human history. 30 days to prepare for a journey into the unknown. 30 days to save his species from extinction. As the chamber doors closed behind him, he made a silent promise. Someday humanity would return to this place, but next time they would not come as beggars asking for acceptance. They would come as equals, ready to build something better than the Council had ever dreamed possible. Captain Minho Choi stared at the empty space ahead of his ship. 3 months had passed since the exile began. Now millions of human vessels floated in the darkness between stars. The void reaches looked exactly like their name suggested, a place where nothing existed. His exploration ship, the New Soul, had been scanning for weeks. Every reading showed the same thing: dead space, cold rocks, and no signs of life. Behind him, the massive refugee fleet waited for any good news. Families lived in cargo holds. Children played in narrow hallways between supply crates. Everyone wondered if they would die out here in the dark. "Captain," called engineer So-young Kim from her station. "I'm getting strange readings from that asteroid field ahead. The rocks seem to be made of materials that don't match any known minerals." Minho moved to look at her screen. The asteroids did look odd. They were too smooth, too regular in shape. "Take us closer, but stay alert. We can't afford to lose this ship." As they approached, the truth became clear. These weren't natural asteroids. They were the remains of enormous buildings, broken apart and floating in space. The metal was black, and covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. "My God!" whispered Dr. Jiwon Yang, the ship's scientist. "These are ruins, ancient ruins. Someone built a city here, maybe thousands of years ago." The discovery changed everything. Within hours, Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo Lee ordered a full investigation. Teams of scientists and engineers spread across the asteroid field. What they found amazed them. The ruins belonged to a civilization far more advanced than the Galactic Council. Their technology worked in ways humans had never seen before. So-young spent days studying the alien machinery. Most of it was broken, but some pieces still functioned. "Look at this," she told her team, pointing to a small device that glowed with soft blue light. "It's some kind of energy source, but it doesn't use any fuel I can identify. It just makes power from nothing." Dr. Yang worked on translating the symbols found everywhere in the ruins. The language was complex, but patterns began to emerge. "I think they called themselves the Architects," she announced during a meeting with the ship's officers. "They didn't just build these cities, they built entire star systems. They moved planets around like furniture. The more they learned, the more questions arose. Where had the Architects gone? Why had they left such powerful technology behind? And why hadn't the Galactic Council ever mentioned them? The answer to the last question came from an unexpected source. Captain Dong-hyuk Nam, leading a salvage team on the largest ruin, found a sealed chamber deep inside the structure. When they opened it, they discovered they weren't alone in the void reaches. A group of beings unlike any human had ever seen waited inside. They looked like clouds of light that could take solid form when needed. They spoke directly into the minds of the humans, without using words at all. "Welcome, young species," the leader said inside Nam's thoughts. "We are the Luminari. We have been waiting here for a very long time." The Luminari told an incredible story. They had been exiled by the Galactic Council 300 years ago. Their crime was developing technology that made council ships look primitive. Rather than admit the Luminari were more advanced, the council declared them dangerous and sent them to the void reaches. "You are not the first to be banished here," the Luminari explained. "Every few hundred years, the council finds a new species to fear. They always send them to this place, thinking it is empty. But we who live here know the truth." Over the following weeks, humans made contact with other exiled species. The Symborians arrived first. They looked like large insects, but their minds were connected in a way that let them think as one. They had been exiled for refusing to follow council trade laws that they said were unfair. Next came the Volcani, beings who could change their shape like liquid. The council had feared their ability to look like other species. They worried the Volcani might spy on them or steal their secrets. Each exiled species had found pieces of architect technology. Each had learned different things from the ancient ruins, but none had discovered as much as they could working together. Sung-Hoon Kang, who had once been a trade coordinator with the council, became the link between all the groups. He spoke many alien languages and understood their different ways of thinking. Under his guidance, the exiled species began to share what they had learned. "The council has been lying to the galaxy for thousands of years," Sung-Hoon told a gathering of human leaders. "They're not the wise elders they pretend to be. They're bullies who destroy anyone who might challenge them." The proof came from the architect databases that Dr. Yang finally learned to read. The records told a dark story. The architects had once ruled this part of the galaxy. They had been peaceful, building amazing things and helping younger species grow and learn. The council had destroyed them out of jealousy and fear. "It wasn't war," Yang explained as she showed the recorded history to Admiral Lee. "The council used diseases and sabotage. They made it look like the architects were destroying themselves. Then they moved in and took over the empty planets." The revelation filled the humans with anger, but also with purpose. They weren't just exiles anymore. They were the latest victims of an ancient injustice. But unlike previous exiled species, humans had something special. They had the ability to learn quickly and adapt to anything. Working with their new allies, human engineers, began to understand architect technology. So-young led teams that learned to build new machines using the ancient knowledge. The devices they created were like magic, but they followed scientific rules that humans could master. The first success was a ship engine that could travel faster than anything the council possessed. The second was a device that could hide ships from all known sensors. The third was a weapon that could disable enemy ships without destroying them. As the months passed, the refugee fleet changed. Ships that had been crowded with scared families became mobile cities. Engineers who had been unemployed found new purpose-building impossible machines. Children who had been bored began learning from alien teachers who thought in ways no human had ever imagined. Minho stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at what had once seemed like empty space. Now he could see the hidden beauty of the void reaches. Ancient stations orbited dead stars. Secret cities existed inside hollow asteroids. The remains of the greatest civilization in galactic history waited to share their knowledge with anyone brave enough to learn. The humans had been sent here to die. Instead, they had found teachers, allies, and the tools they would need to build something greater than their enemies had ever imagined. The council thought they had solved their human problem by throwing them away. They were about to discover how wrong they could be. Dr. Minji Yoon wiped sweat from her forehead as she stood before the massive architect machine. 10 years had passed since the exile began. 10 years of studying, learning, and slowly understanding technology that seemed like pure magic. Today, she would attempt something that could change everything. The machine filled an entire cavern inside the largest asteroid. Its walls were covered with symbols that glowed and shifted like living things. For months, Minji and her team had worked to understand its purpose. The architect records called it a Genesis Forge, a device that could create anything from basics. Materials! Are you sure about this? Asked her assistant, looking nervous. If we make a mistake, this thing could blow up half the asteroid. Minji smiled. We've run the calculations 100 times. The architects built these machines to be safe. They wouldn't create something that could hurt people by accident. She placed her hand on the control panel. The symbols under her palm grew brighter. Throughout the cavern, ancient systems came to life. Lights flickered on. Machines that had been silent for thousands of years began to hum with power. The Genesis Forge worked exactly as the records had promised. Raw materials went in one end. Perfect ships came out the other. But these weren't just copies of human designs. The Forge created vessels that combined human ideas with architect technology. They were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Taehyung Song watched the first ship emerge from the Forge with amazement. The vessel was beautiful, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. Its hull was made of materials that could repair themselves if damaged. Its engines could push it through space at speeds that broke every known rule of physics. How many can we build? Taehyung asked. As many as we need, Minji replied. The Forge doesn't get tired. It doesn't make mistakes. We just need to keep feeding it materials. Within months, the hidden shipyards of the void reaches were producing hundreds of vessels. Each one was invisible to council sensors. Each one could outrun and outfight anything in the galactic fleet. But the humans were careful. They built their ships in secret, hiding them in hollow asteroids and empty star systems. Chae-Young Lee had become the unofficial leader of all the exiled species. She was young for such responsibility, but she had a gift for bringing different peoples together. Under her guidance, the exiled alliance grew stronger every day. We're not just building ships, she told a gathering of alliance leaders. We're building hope. For too long, the council has decided who gets to live free and who gets thrown away. That ends now. The alliance shared everything they learned. The Symborians taught humans how to link their minds during battle, creating perfect teamwork between ship crews. The Luminari showed them how to manipulate energy in ways that seemed impossible. The Volcani trained human spies in the art of disguise and infiltration. In return, humans shared their greatest gift, the ability to take any idea and make it better. They improved Symborian technology until it worked for species with individual minds. They created new forms of energy control that even the Luminari found amazing. They developed disguise techniques that surpassed anything the Volcani had imagined. But the real breakthrough came when pilot Wonho Jeon completed the first scouting mission into Council space. His ship, equipped with the latest stealth technology, had spent 3 months studying Council defenses. What he found shocked everyone. They're weaker than we thought, Wonho reported to the Alliance leadership. Their ships are old. Their technology hasn't improved in hundreds of years. They've been so busy staying in power, they forgot how to grow stronger. The Council had made a fatal mistake. They had spent so much time crushing potential rivals that they had stopped innovating. Their fleets were huge, but they relied on technology that was thousands of years old. Against architect-enhanced ships, they would be helpless. More importantly, Wonho had discovered cracks in council control. Many species were unhappy with their rulers. Some planets paid crushing taxes to support the council's lifestyle. Others were forbidden from developing new technology. The galaxy was ready for change, but nobody had been strong enough to challenge the old order. That was about to change. The Alliance's greatest discovery came from the deepest architect archives. Dr. Yang had finally learned to access the most protected files. What she found there made her call an emergency meeting of all Alliance leaders. "The Council didn't just destroy the architects," she announced to the shocked gathering. "They've done this before. Many times. Every time a species becomes advanced enough to challenge them, they find a way to eliminate the threat. The records showed a pattern going back thousands of years. Advanced civilizations would arise and flourish. Then mysterious disasters would strike them. Plagues would wipe out their populations. Civil wars would tear them apart. Natural disasters would destroy their worlds. In every case, the Council would arrive afterward to help by taking control of the survivors. They're not maintaining galactic peace," Yang continued. "They're preventing galactic progress. They keep everyone weak and dependent so they can stay in power forever." The revelation filled the Alliance with purpose. They weren't just fighting for their own freedom. They were fighting for the future of every intelligent species in the galaxy. The Council had to be stopped before they destroyed more civilizations, but the Alliance was still small compared to the Council's vast empire. They needed to be smart about how they fought. They needed to turn the galaxy's anger against its oppressors. Chae-Young developed a plan that was both simple and brilliant. Instead of attacking Council forces directly, they would expose the truth about Council crimes. They would show the galaxy what their wise elders had really been doing for thousands of years. The first step was to rescue other exiled species that the Alliance hadn't found yet. Long-range scouts discovered dozens of forgotten refugee camps, scattered throughout the void reaches. Some held species that had been banished centuries ago. Others contained survivors of civilizations the Council had supposedly saved from natural disasters. Each rescued group brought new knowledge and new reasons to hate the Council. The Alliance grew from thousands of ships to millions. Hidden bases were established throughout the galaxy's edge. Secret communication networks connected rebel cells on Council worlds. The Council still didn't know what was happening. Their sensors couldn't detect Alliance ships. Their spies couldn't infiltrate Alliance bases. They noticed some strange incidents: missing patrol ships, failed raids on pirate bases, mysterious technical problems with their equipment. But they blamed these on normal criminal activity. They had no idea that their former victims were preparing to become their judges. As the 10th year of exile ended, Chae-Young stood in the command center of the Alliance's main base. Around her, representatives of dozens of species worked together planning their next moves. Humans sat beside Symborians. Luminari shared ideas with Volcani. Former enemies had become family, united by their common cause. Through the windows, she could see the construction yards where Genesis forges worked day and night. Architect technology, guided by human innovation and alien wisdom, was creating an armada unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council had exiled humanity to protect their power. Instead, they had created the force that would finally bring them down. The long age of corruption and stagnation was about to end. A new age of freedom and progress was about to begin, and it would all start with showing the galaxy the truth about their so-called protectors. High Arbiter Velthan Corvex paced across his private chamber high above the Council capital. 15 years had passed since the humans were exiled, but lately, strange things kept happening. Patrol ships vanished without sending distress calls. Trade routes suffered mysterious delays. Some worlds reported seeing ships that didn't appear on any sensors. "Sir?" His aide entered the room with obvious worry. "We've lost contact with the 7th Fleet. They were investigating disturbances in the Keftar system. Their last message was 3 days ago." Velthan's purple skin grew darker, a sign of his growing anger. "How does an entire fleet simply disappear? Are we dealing with some kind of natural phenomenon?" "That's just it, sir. There's no evidence of any danger in that region. No solar storms, no asteroid fields, no hostile wildlife. The fleet just stopped responding. Across the galaxy, similar reports came in daily. The Council's iron grip on galactic affairs was slipping, but they couldn't understand why. Their technology hadn't failed them before. Their enemies had always been weaker and easier to track. What they didn't know was that Seojin Kim and his intelligence teams were carefully planning each strike. Seojin had spent years studying Council weaknesses. He knew exactly where to hit them to cause maximum confusion with minimum risk. "Remember," he told his team before their latest mission, "we're not trying to destroy them yet. We're trying to make them scared and angry. Scared people make mistakes, and we need them to make very big mistakes." The operation was called Twilight, and its goal was simple: show the galaxy the truth about their rulers. Alliance ships equipped with architect technology had secretly taken control of Council communication networks. When the time was right, every screen on every Council world would display the same message. Commander Una Park led the strike teams that made Twilight possible. Her soldiers moved like ghosts through Council space, infiltrating military bases and government facilities. They planted devices that looked like normal equipment, but could override entire computer systems when activated. Una's teams were made up of humans and Alliance species working together. Volcani shapeshifters could walk into any building by copying the appearance of authorized personnel. Luminari energy beings could disable security systems without leaving any trace. Symborian collective minds could coordinate complex operations across multiple star systems. But the real power behind Twilight came from the Architect archives. Dr. Yang had spent years gathering evidence of Council crimes. She had recordings of secret meetings where Council leaders planned the destruction of innocent civilizations. She had documents that proved natural disasters were actually weapons tests. She had testimony from survivors who had watched their worlds burn. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to deny. The Council wasn't a peaceful organization that maintained galactic order. They were criminals who had murdered billions of people to stay in power. The day of revelation began quietly. Across thousands of worlds, people went about their normal lives. They worked in factories and farms, taught children and healed the sick, never suspecting that everything they believed about their government was about to change. Then, at exactly the same moment across the galaxy, every communication device activated. Screens that normally showed entertainment and news instead displayed the symbol of the Exiled Alliance, a broken chain with stars shining through the gaps. Chae-Young Lee's voice spoke in hundreds of languages, translated by architect technology, so every being could understand. "People of the galaxy," she began, "for too long you have been lied to. Today, you will learn the truth about those who claim to protect you." What followed was the most damning presentation in galactic history. One by one, Council crimes were exposed with perfect evidence. The audience saw recordings of Council leaders laughing as they planned genocide. They watched as entire species were poisoned to prevent them from becoming too advanced. They learned that every mysterious disaster in the past 1,000 years had been murder. The architect civilization hadn't died from natural causes. The Council had released a biological weapon that destroyed their immune systems. The Zefkari hadn't been wiped out by solar radiation. Council ships had bombed there, colonies from orbit. The Volmaran hadn't committed mass suicide. They had been driven insane by psychic weapons. Hundreds of civilizations had been eliminated, not because they were dangerous, but because they were successful. The Council's greatest fear wasn't invasion or war. It was progress. They were terrified that younger species might build something better than their ancient empire. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as their heroes were revealed to be monsters. Then the anger began. On Velthari Prime, the Council's capital world, riots broke out within hours. Citizens who had proudly served the Empire for generations turned on their leaders. Military units refused orders to suppress the protests. Some officers openly joined the rebels. Vestan tried to dismiss the evidence as fake, but his own people didn't believe him. Too many details matched things they had always wondered about. Too many mysterious events suddenly made sense. The truth had a weight that no lie could overcome. "Shut down all communication networks," Vestan ordered desperately. "Block these terrorist transmissions." But it was too late. The revelation had spread too far and too fast. Even when they cut the official networks, people shared the information through personal devices and private channels. The truth couldn't be stopped once it started moving. Worse, the alliance wasn't finished. As the galaxy reeled from the first revelations, new evidence appeared daily. Security camera footage showed Council agents planting bombs on civilian ships. Financial records proved that humanitarian aid was actually money stolen from the victims' own treasuries. Military reports described weapons that could only be used for mass murder. Species that had been loyal to the Council for thousands of years began to question everything. Planets that had paid crushing taxes for protection realized they were being robbed. Worlds that had accepted Council guidance understood they were being controlled. Then came the liberation raids. Unipark's teams, now supported by local rebels, began freeing political prisoners from secret Council facilities. These weren't the criminal terrorists the Council claimed to be fighting. They were scientists, artists, and leaders who had asked inconvenient questions or developed unauthorized technology. Each freed prisoner had stories that confirmed the Alliance's evidence. They spoke of torture chambers where people were punished for thinking differently. They described research facilities where Council scientists developed new ways to control and eliminate other species. They revealed the existence of slave worlds, where entire populations worked to support Council luxury. The most shocking discovery came from the liberation of a facility on Korthval 7. Hidden in underground laboratories, Alliance forces found thousands of children from dozens of species. They had been kidnapped from their families and subjected to experiments designed to make them more obedient and less intelligent. "They're not just killing our civilizations," Yang reported to the Alliance leadership. "They're trying to breed the independence out of us. They want to turn every species into mindless servants." The Korthval discovery broke the last resistance to the Alliance cause. Even species that had supported the Council turned against them. Military units mutinied. Colonial governors declared independence. Trade guilds refused to ship supplies to Council worlds. Within months, the Galactic Empire that had lasted thousands of years was falling apart. But Vestan and his allies weren't finished yet. If they couldn't maintain control through lies, they would try to keep it through force. The Council began gathering its remaining loyal forces for a final assault. They still had massive fleets and powerful weapons. They planned to crush the rebellion before it could grow stronger, then rebuild their empire with stricter controls. They didn't know that the Alliance had been waiting for exactly this response. Hidden throughout the galaxy, millions of ships built with architect technology prepared for the final battle. The exiled species were ready to reclaim their freedom. The age of lies was ending. The age of truth was about to begin with the greatest space battle in galactic history. Admiral Jaehyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Sol Rising, watching as the Grand Fleet of Liberation emerged from hyperspace. 20 years had passed since humanity's exile began. Now, millions of ships filled the darkness around the Council's capital system. They came not as refugees or beggars, but as liberators bringing justice to an oppressed galaxy. The ships were beautiful and terrible to see. Human engineering had merged with architect technology and alien innovation to create vessels that seemed more like living things than machines. Their hulls shifted color like chameleon skin. Their weapons channeled forces that could tear apart space itself. Their shields could turn solid matter into harmless energy. "Sir," reported Captain Neon Yu from her position at the tactical station, "Council forces are forming defensive positions around the capital planet. They have approximately 50,000 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts. Jae-hyun smiled grimly. 50,000 ships would have been impossible. Odds just a few years ago. Now they were barely a challenge. The Alliance fleet outnumbered them 5-1, and each Alliance ship was worth 10 Council vessels in combat power. But this battle wasn't really about numbers or technology. It was about justice. Every person in the Liberation Fleet had suffered, under Council rule. Every ship carried survivors of species the Council had tried to destroy. They weren't fighting for conquest or revenge. They were fighting for the right of every intelligent being to live free and grow strong. The battle began when the Council fleet opened fire without warning. Massive energy beams lanced through space, aimed at the lead Alliance ships. It was exactly the kind of attack people expected from the Council. Sudden, overwhelming, and designed to terrify their enemies into surrender. Instead, the Alliance ships simply faded away. Architect stealth technology made them invisible to Council. Sensors. The deadly beams passed harmlessly through empty space, while the real fleet maneuvered into attack position. "All ships, this is Admiral O," Jae-hyun announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember, we're here to stop a corrupt government, not destroy innocent people. Disable their ships when possible. Destroy them only when necessary. Our goal is liberation, not extermination." The Alliance attack was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that could appear and disappear at will struck from impossible angles. Weapons that ignored traditional shields tore through Council defenses. Entire squadrons of Council fighters found themselves frozen in place by energy fields they couldn't understand or escape. Within hours, the great Council fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years was reduced to floating scrap and helpless hulks. But the Alliance forces took no joy in the destruction. Too many good people had died because of Council arrogance. Too many civilizations had been lost forever. The real victory came when Alliance troops landed on the capital, planet itself. Captain Naeon led the assault on the Council chambers, where humanity's exile had been decided 20 years before. But when they broke down the doors, they found the Great Hall empty except for one figure. High Arbiter Velthan Corvex sat alone, in his throne, surrounded by the abandoned seats of his fellow Council members. His purple skin had faded to a dull gray. His proud bearing had collapsed into defeated exhaustion. "So," he said quietly as Alliance soldiers surrounded him, "the exiles have returned to claim their revenge." Chae-young Lee entered the chamber, no longer the young refugee coordinator who had helped organize the human exodus. 20 years of struggle had transformed her into a leader who commanded respect from dozens of species. But her eyes held wisdom, not hatred. "We're not here for revenge," she told the fallen dictator. "We're here for justice. You and your council will stand trial for your crimes against galactic civilization. Every species you destroyed deserves to have their story told. Every life you ended deserves to be remembered." Velthan laughed bitterly. "Justice? You speak of justice after destroying my empire? After turning the galaxy against its rightful rulers? Your empire was built on murder and lies," Chae-young replied calmly. "The galaxy rejected you because they finally learned the truth. We didn't turn them against you. We simply showed them who you really were. The trial of the Galactic Council became the most important legal proceeding in galactic history. Representatives from every known species came to witness the evidence and hear the testimony. For months, the galaxy listened as victim after victim told their stories. The scope of Council crimes was so vast that even the judges struggled to comprehend it. Some Council members showed remorse for their actions. Others remained defiant to the end. A few had fled to hidden bases and continued to fight a guerrilla war against the New Order. But their time was over. The galaxy had chosen freedom over security, progress over stagnation. The hardest part wasn't defeating the Council. It was deciding what to build in their place. The alliance included dozens of species with different ideas about government and law. Some wanted strict central control to prevent another dictatorship. Others insisted on complete independence for each world. Seojun Kim, now recognized as one of the galaxy's leading political theorists, proposed a solution that combined the best ideas from every species. The new government would be a true republic, with representatives chosen by free elections on every world. No single species or group could control the system. Every decision would require cooperation between different peoples. The council failed because they tried to rule through fear. Seojun explained to the Constitutional Convention, "We will succeed because we choose to lead through hope. Every species will have a voice. Every world will have rights. Every individual will have the chance to reach their full potential." The Galactic Republic was officially founded 5 years after the liberation of the Council capital. The ceremony took place on the same world where humans had been condemned to exile, but the old council chambers had been torn down. In their place stood a beautiful park where children from 100 species played together under artificial suns. The new government center was built underground, with meeting rooms that could accommodate beings of any size or environmental need. The architecture combined the best ideas from every known civilization, creating spaces that were both functional and inspiring. But the real symbol of the new age wasn't a building. It was the people who led it. President Chae-young Lee, a former refugee, worked alongside Vice President Zekalari, whose species had once been enslaved by the council. General Jae-hyun commanded military forces that included former enemies fighting side by side. Dr. Yang headed a research institute where the galaxy's brightest minds collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under council rule. The transformation wasn't always smooth. Some worlds struggled to adapt to democracy after thousands of years of autocracy. Others faced economic difficulties as the old system of tribute and taxation was replaced by fair trade agreements. A few regions erupted in violence as old grudges and territorial disputes resurfaced. But for every problem, the galaxy found solutions. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to negotiate instead of fight. Worlds that had been kept poor and backward received technology and education that let them prosper. Young people who had never known freedom embraced opportunities their parents could never have imagined. The greatest success came in scientific and cultural advancement. Under council rule, research had been strictly controlled to prevent any species from becoming too powerful. The Republic encouraged innovation and shared discoveries freely. Within a decade, new technologies emerged that made even architect achievements look primitive. Artists created works that combined traditions from across the galaxy. Musicians composed symphonies that could only be appreciated by minds from different species working together. Writers told stories that helped every culture understand and appreciate the others. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy saw itself. Under the Council, most beings had believed that progress was dangerous and unity impossible. The Republic proved that different species could work together to build something greater than any could achieve alone. The Void Reaches, once a prison for outcasts, became the Republic's greatest research center. The old architect ruins were preserved as museums and study sites. New cities rose from the asteroids, built with technology that surpassed even the ancient masters. Children who had been born in exile now served as ambassadors and leaders throughout the galaxy. On the 20th anniversary of the Republic's founding, Seojun Kim stood before the Galactic Assembly to deliver the annual address. Around him sat representatives from over 1,000 worlds, beings of every imaginable shape and size united in their commitment to freedom and progress. 25 years ago, he began, humanity was exiled from this chamber because we were judged too dangerous to live among civilized peoples. Today we gather as equals in a civilization that surpasses anything our predecessors achieved. The Council feared that diversity would lead to chaos. Instead, it led to greatness. Through the great windows of the assembly hall, the lights of 1,000 ships could be seen coming and going. Trade vessels carried goods and ideas between distant worlds.